Well, I think everyone here has probably had a rough night. Who went out to the party last night, by the way? All right, so you guys are troopers. Well, I figured before I even tell you anything about Seed Camp, I'd start off with some stories to share some of the kinds of things that we're looking at. So yesterday we had a lot of speakers come and tell you kind of what we're looking for, what investors look for. You had Sitar tell you about how to gamify your fundraising. You had Michael Jackson tell you about what angels look for. I know that later you're going to have John Bradford from Springboard talking about what makes up a good team. But what really helps sometimes is to just look at specific companies that basically encapsulate that thinking. That way you can use them as examples. Anyway, I've chosen two segments here to start with examples. One of them, and on purpose, they're contrasting. All of these companies have received follow-on financing, and they're doing really, really well. So they're very good case studies. Now, I've chosen fashion. I don't know about you guys, but personally, I struggle with fashion every day. And it's something that I'm constantly learning about. But what's really interesting is learning about all the problems that the industry actually has that I did not know about until I spent some time with the founders, Jeff and Julia. Before I go into what Edited does, let me share something quite interesting that I saw in a book, or it was an article, I can't remember. So there was a study that was done of music, and to see if you took two groups and you gave them the same amount of music and the same songs, whether or not the artists that were popular in one group would be popular in the other group. Reasoning would stand that, let's say you had Miles Davis, a very, very well-known jazz musician who's really good. You would figure that this is a high-quality musician in this group, he should be a high-quality musician in this group. Turns out that's not the case. Turns out that the biggest thing that determines the success of any one particular music group is the people within the group that are listening to the music and choosing the music, AKA there are influencers within the buckets of music listeners. And so the same thing goes for fashion. Fashion is one of these things that's intrinsically subjective. It's very hard to actually have a chance of determining what it is that somebody likes entirely the way that you would look at megapixels in a camera. It's very quantitative. You know that if you have a 7 megapixel camera, there's going to be one that's 12, and that's inherently better than the one that's 7. Well, with fashion, it's not that simple. You have one year you have the color gold and gold color cuts. That's a lot nicer. The next year might be black. Black is the new black. And so this has always stumped fashion retailers. It's always been a problem for fashion retailers. And what I didn't know was that there's so much of a problem that it's 50% of the stuff that is bought by retailers ends up having to be discounted at some point. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that discounting isn't necessarily always part of a strategic pricing plan, but still, that's a high number, 50%. Imagine if you went into any kind of supermarket and 50% of the stuff was supposed to go to trash or supposed to be given away. I mean, it's a high number. And why is that high number? Because it's inherently a subjective decision. There are buyers inside fashion houses or retail shops that have to make these decisions. Yes, next year, a whole year from now, I think, based upon all the catwalk shows that I went to, this is going to be hot. Well, it turns out that's not easy to do. So our company, Edited, does that very same thing. They have a lot of data about every single catwalk show, the colors that were used, the cuts, whether people are into shorts, capri pants, blouses, whatever. They correlate that with social metrics, and they give you, as the user of this data, an intelligent decision. You can now choose, hey, based upon what people are liking, you can make this decision. If you were to move that to music, you would say, based upon the fact that 80% of the music videos out there have been using hip-hop, maybe you should invest in a hip-hop band. Well, it's the same thing. It helps make structured decisions out of unstructured data, and also democratizes that process, because a lot of retail businesses did not have that opportunity unless you had the money to have 2 or 3 different people hired for the very specific purpose of doing market research. So that's one example. Another example in the fashion space is Look, L-O-K-K, L-O-O-K-K. And what they do is that they bring fashion designers and their ideas straight to the consumer. Whenever you go to something like a Louis Vuitton or Michael Kors or anything like this, the designs you see in the store are actually like the tip of the iceberg. You know, that's what the designs have been approved. And then there's this whole iceberg of designs and designers that came up with stuff that you never got to see. Well, what if one of those is actually really cool and somebody in the editorial process cut it out? Well, this is exactly what Look does. It lets fashion designers put up their designs. It lets you vote which ones you like, and then it goes into production. Again, taking something that was previously not accessible, aka as a fashion designer, being able to put your stuff out there and then having it manufactured, and has brought it to the masses. I put the farmer there. I put a banana farmer, even though I'm not going to speak about banana farmers. Partially, the reason why I put a banana farmer there is because I'm from Honduras, and Honduras' main export crop is bananas, and I think I'm probably the first Honduran to be here at How to Web, so I figured I would just, remind my country there. But Farmer-On is a tool for farmers. So farmers have a lot of problems, and I'm not a farmer, so I'm going to have to rely sometimes on my notes here for some of the specific functions that farmers can do. But effectively, a lot of things farmers do is done entirely on either things that they've had passed down to them as know-how, things that they read or that their friends tell them they should do, or just tradition. And they then try to do that based upon Excel or paper, and it's very hard to necessarily make calculations in mass. It's very hard to integrate a lot of the economies of scales that we have in the web, that we've gotten used to in the web. For example, some of the things Farmer-On can do is it can give you alerts when cows are not producing the amount of milk you require. It can give you an idea of the cost structure for 1 liter of milk. It can give you harvest wastage reduction. It can help you understand when you need to buy how much feed. It helps you understand, for example, if your cow that was recently vaccinated, if you have a certain percentage of your cows that have been vaccinated, when and where you can do what with them. There's a lot of analytics there for farmers that was previously not available. So this is really simplifying a big problem for one group of users and making it accessible to all at a relatively low cost. So those are 3 case studies of things that are interesting to an investor. They've all been invested in at this point. They're moving very quickly, and they're very tangible examples of democratization of technology, the simplification of technology for the mass consumer, and also of what investors think will really, really drive value, both for the founders and also for the investors. So a little bit about sort of SeedCamp and what we do and who I am. My name is Carlos, as you probably ascertained from the previous slide. I'm a partner at SeedCamp. My Twitter handle there, @CEduardo. I started off as a pen tester at a company called GTEI, which then became Baltimore Technologies. I ended up moving to the New York Stock Exchange and worked in their R&D department. At that time, my sister's husband asked me to help him with his startup, as helping him with the technology of his startup. And I watched the birth and eventual death of the Young Vitamin Company, which was our startup then. And I got to see a lot of the things that a lot of startups go through. I also decided at that point in time that I really liked also investing and being part of the ecosystem of technology. And so I started working at Dowdy Hanson as a VC. Sitar, which you probably saw speak yesterday, she and I worked together for 4 years. And last year, we were both mentors at SeedCamp. And last year, I decided to join SeedCamp full-time as a partner because I loved it so much. So that is how I got to where I am today. in terms of who Seed Camp is, we're a team of 4 and an army of interns, but effectively, Reshma and I co-manage Seed Camp, and we have a rock star team of Philip and Kirsten who do and help and are particularly inspiring for the companies in the amount of work and passion that they bring to every interaction. Seed Camp is a micro seed investment program, and what we do is we host events globally where we bring together mentors and companies, and we help them not only get investment, which is, yes, that's one part of what we do, but also in understanding what the pitfalls of starting a business can be like, and what things that they could avoid in the short term, what things they should do in the long term. I've had I've had several startups, but I've had one startup in particular that came up to me and said, "You saved me 6 months worth of problems by going to your Seed Camp day." So it's an event that companies apply to. We have over 2,000 plus applicants a year. Roughly around 200 attend all of our programs, and roughly around 15 to 20 investments per year. So right now we have 57 companies, as Bogdan mentioned earlier, and really that is where the value lies at this point. I've seen, I'm going to talk to you about all the other things that Seed Camp does for its companies, but really the key thing is the network. I was at Sequoia during our US trip, which I'll tell you about in a second. And this was during our US trip. And at this point, all the companies had heard each other's presentations at least, 20 times. And I think this is when it hit me. There was a point when one of the companies was making his presentation, and he forgot what he was supposed to say. And one of the other team members jumped in and finished it for him. And it wasn't that obvious, but it was one of these things where you can see where them helping each other out actually is far more useful than any one of the mentors or anybody else. And I see that every day in our forums, in our email groups. Our companies help each other out more than any one mentor helps them individually, in terms of technical questions, in terms of fundraising questions, in terms of anything else. And being part of the Seed Camp family is joining that family of people that are very smart, very dedicated, very passionate about what they're doing, and helping each other out. So other than the 57 alumni companies, the companies receive investment. It's a 50,000 euro investment. They also receive a founders pack, and that founders pack includes a lot of discounted services and exclusive offers, APIs, discounts, etc. We have monthly events that are not the investment events. These are events only specifically for the companies that are already in the Seed Camp family, and these include talks from several mentors. We've had intense days on PR, on B2B sales, on corporate governance, on how to fundraise, how to sell your business, and all these things really add up to effectively a curriculum that you're part of. We have, obviously, Reshma, myself, Philip, and Kirsten are available to the teams for any questions. I mean, I spend as much time as is needed with the companies to help them with any number of things. We have a new program called the EIR program, which effectively is a way of formalizing the relationship that a lot of our mentors want to have with the companies. So it's an expert in residence program. And effectively, these are more permanent advisors, or more involved advisors that companies can choose to have as part of their team to help them advisory board, to help them progress faster. And then there's the two intense trips. We have the Seed Camp week, which just happened in September, and that is 1 week where product managers, entrepreneurs, investors, and a lot of people in the tech community, service providers, are there to provide the companies with mentoring. Usually this is a huge quantum leap for a lot of these companies in terms of thinking and questions that they have answered. The US trip is the same thing, and as I alluded to earlier, what it is, we take all our companies, we fly them to Boston, New York, San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Seattle, Austin, South by Southwest, and we introduce them to all the corporates, to all the venture capitalists and angels, and we basically expose them to quite a bit of of the people that they need to know as part of joining the ecosystem quickly. And that's kind of, I know that the word accelerator is used quite a bit, but frankly, that's kind of why I can see why that word might be appropriate. It's because we help accelerate a lot of the things that are difficult for a company. We help them understand all the business problems, all the business issues. We help them find the right advisors. We help them with any kind of questions that they have regarding fundraising. We help them finding a lot of the contacts that they need to make these things happen. So going back to what I started off with, it's about the trends in seed investment. So I touched upon two things here. I talked about the democratization of services and the simplification of services. The democratization of services being where you take something that was previously only accessible to the few and you make it accessible to the many. And on the other side of things is things that have been accessible to, well, have been available to everyone, but because of their difficulty or the challenges associated with taking the service, people have held back from using it. And these new wave of services, which simplify that process, accomplish this. So let's start off with the democratization of services. One of the areas that, and actually it had nothing to do with this article, it's just an article that came out recently, had some of the things that were ripe for disruption. And one of the things that was ripe for disruption was financial services. So it turns out, actually, that we've already made some investments in this area, and we're finding that they are, in fact, the next step, the next wave in democratization of services. So, for example, foreign currency exchange. How many times do you have to go to the airport and you see somebody's getting like a substantial middleman cut on currency exchange? That's you kind of feel a little bit robbed, right? So what if, you know your friend has euros, you have pounds, why can't you just swap it? Well, that's what TransferWise is doing. It's doing peer-to-peer currency exchange. All right, well, let's look at another problem. Recently, I saw another startup that's doing hedging, currency hedging. So think about if you're a small business, especially a global business, where you have accounts receivable in one specific currency, and then you have to pay your bills in another currency, and all of a sudden, by the time you actually get the real money, the exchange rate has changed, and all of a sudden, you're stuck with a different expectation in how much money you're getting. Well, bigger businesses have always had the ability to hedge their currencies, but smaller businesses have not. It's too hard, it's too voluminous, it's too expensive, whatever. So yes, this is another area that's ripe for disruption. For example, large retail stores have always had an army of people checking the prices of what's going on in the market. They've always had this. So smaller retailers have been blind. They don't know what's going on. They don't know if somebody priced something out. They don't know if somebody's out of stock, whatever. One of our companies, Profitero, does this. It allows any retailer to subscribe on a software as a service platform to all the retail analytics of their competitors. They know, hey, such and such is out of stock. Would you like to raise your price? Maybe. So these guys are helping bring those kinds of services that were only available to larger companies down to the smaller ones. Short-term loans for small businesses. A lot of businesses out there have the problem that they'll have an accounts receivable that they're going to expect. They need to spend money, but they don't have it. They know they're going to get it, they just don't have it right now. So it puts them in a cash crunch. Now, traditionally, the process has been you go to a bank, and then you go to another bank, and then you go to another bank, and that time, you already ran out of cash. So what BillBus is doing is it creates a marketplace for people to put their accounts receivable, effectively say, look, who's willing to loan me money on a short-term basis so that I can basically bridge my cash gap? And it's just making it a lot easier for smaller businesses to find that money more quickly. Another one of our recent investments is RentLord. What does RentLord do? How many of you, I don't know much about Romanian real estate, but how many of you hate your real estate agency? All right, I guess you guys love real estate. So in the United Kingdom, I mean, everybody is really afraid of these people, right? They usually are the ones that are, both from the landlord perspective, they feel like they're getting an unnecessary amount of money for what they're doing, and both from the tenant perspective, they think these guys are pushing them, and they're bullying them, and that they're trying to play games with them. And so what if you could just cut that out? they're there because there's a lot of things that need to happen. There needs to be legal agreements, there needs to be disputes, and there needs to be, maybe if there's subtenants, anything like that. All that's what they do. Well, rent lords created a platform, a marketplace, where that can happen more efficiently, where you can bring tenants and landlords together and even do some really cool things. For example, let's say you're a landlord and you have 3 properties, and you know one of them is about to expire. You can offer the current tenant where he wants to renew it, or you can have a wait list of people that are interested in it because they're following the property, just like you would with Twitter or Tumblr or something like that. So it's an easy way to sort of take web concepts onto something that has been generally inefficient and not accessible to everyone. Especially if you are a landlord that wants to make a property available but just couldn't be bothered with the whole relationship you need to establish with an agency. So here's another one. We all know that certain countries, certain large countries in the world, have an obesity problem. Now, part of resolving that problem is actually motivation, right? And there's a lot of applications out there like Runkeeper, Strava, which do a great job of gamifying the motivation bit. But you still have to be somewhat motivated, and you still have to know what you need to do to train so that you don't get injured. I'm a cyclist, and although I'm a little bit injured right now because I pushed myself too hard, ironically enough, I was in a situation where I injured myself because I overexerted what I was supposed to do. And this is because I didn't have a coach to tell me, hey, look, I know you want to get to your goal faster, but that does not mean that if you cycle 8 hours today and 8 hours tomorrow, that you're going to get there any faster other than injuring yourself. And part of what the gamifying of sports is doing is that it's incentivizing that kind of behavior. And a personal trainer helps you not make those kinds of mistakes. But the problem is that personal trainers are expensive, right? You need to pay, in the UK, I think it's roughly about 300 pounds for 10 sessions or something like that. That's a lot of money for a lot of people. Well, Sportalizer is democratizing that. It is one of 2 companies in the world that have a very smart algorithm to help you know if you had an easy day today, how hard you should train tomorrow. Or if you had a hard day today, should you take a break tomorrow? And so it's bringing that to the masses. So now moving to the next one, which is the simplification of interconnectivity of existing services. So how many of you here send out email campaigns? All right, quite a few. I don't know if you've had this problem. When you send out an email campaign in HTML or rich text, you don't know exactly how the recipient's going to get it, if they have Outlook, if they have mail.app, if they have Eudora, if they have Postbox, if they have Sparrow. You don't know how that's going to be rendered. The problem is that different clients have different rendering engines behind them. So what Fractal does, a really simple job, it solves that headache for people. It says, look, we will take care of that. We know what the recipient's going to be because of a string that queries when the email arrives, and then we'll basically format it accordingly. Really simple thing, very helpful. Another one is these 2 companies, Rapportive and Boomerang, are not SeedCamp companies, but they sort of drive the point home. Quagga on the left is one of our companies. And basically what they do is they are add-ons to Gmail, and they really help solve problems that most of us have had. We just haven't been bothered. It's just been too much of a pain in the neck to solve. So Quagga takes every single incoming email that you have and basically sifts for contact information and updates the contact information in your address book with the new information. You remember the days in Plaxo, the days back at Plaxo when you would get a constant email barrage of, hey, such and such said, wondering whether you change your email. Well, this is this is not intrusive like that. This is just whatever comes in, it automatically updates. It really saves you a lot of time. Rapportive, if you're not using it, it's probably one of the coolest things out there. It helps you understand who you're talking to before you even bother replying. It just provides a panel to the right side of your email. It says, hey, look, this is who, and this is what, and where company they're in, and the last tweet, and their Facebook, and their LinkedIn, and it helps you really have a context of who you're speaking with. Boomerang lets you schedule when you're going to send out emails. I know that this is not necessarily important for everyone, but for example, if you're in a different time zone and you want an email to go out at 9 o'clock, or you have maybe a press release that you want to launch at a specific time. It's very helpful to be able to say, I want this email to go out at 9 o'clock, and I want 5 of these types of emails to go out at 12 o'clock. So again, these are things that are made easier through technology, but that were previously too hard for a group of people to use. Now it's being made simpler. I'm going to play a little video for you of PsychoPaint, which also does the same thing, but it's so much better than me explaining it. So let me just play it for you.
Did you ever wanted to be a great painter, but unfortunately you are really bad at it, and too lazy to study it for several years? Well, that's okay, because now with PsychoPaint you can fill your artist soul with no skills. But how does it work? Well, don't worry, it's not rocket science. First you go to psychopaint.com. Then you open a picture you like your cute little puppy or your grandma. You can even use landscape if you don't like none of the above. Then you can paint using a variety of tools like brush, spray can, ribbons, cannon, knife. PsychoPaint will choose the colors automatically for you, so you don't need to worry about it and focus on a style you like: impressionist, cubist, abstract or classic, or something totally unique. Unlike other softwares based on filters, it is your own personality expressed in a painting. Once you are happy with your painting, you can order a print on a real canvas. It might be a great gift for Christmas or Valentine's Day, or you can keep it and show off how a great painter you are. Everybody will think you are super awesome. So get started now. It's real fun, easy and totally free. PsychoPaint.
So there's an example of how a service that, most people want to have a memory that they want to share to their family, but it's very hard to use Photoshop. You could send a picture, that's kind of boring, but what PsychoPaint allows you to do is just to take that image and make it a unique painting, and then just print it straight from PsychoPaint and ship it and make it have it art. I've actually seen some of this stuff printed out. You cannot, like when you use some of like the Monet filters and brush strokes, when you see it printed, it's very hard to tell that it wasn't painted. So it's very cool. Another example of simplification is Vox.io. I'm very excited about this company. It's a Slovenian company, and it's going to change the way that you do communications on the web. It really is. How many of you guys have like 30 Skype contacts on your Skype that you called one time, but like don't ever want to have a call from again? All right, just about everyone. Okay, well, imagine if you could, this is just one of the features Vox.io can do, so go and check it out after my talk, but basically you can issue like a throwaway call. Basically, it's a quick link. The person receives it in their email. As soon as they dial you, the call initiates. After the call is over, it expires. That's one of the many features that Vox.io can do. But what Vox.io is exactly is a web-based, the web DNA version of any kind of voice over IP communication platform, but built bigger. So what does this allow you to do? It allows you to integrate your social networks, for one, right? Because web talking to web, API talking to API. It allows you, in the future, potentially, to do things like, I don't want to receive calls from this social network, but I want to receive calls from this social network. It lets you do stuff like, in your email, if you put in your email signature a phone number, let's say from Honduras, what's the likelihood somebody's going to call you? It's a long-distance call. Some people put the little 0 thing, and you don't know what you're supposed to do. What if it's just a quick link? It just says, hey, call me, and it just launches in your browser. Okay, what if you're in a corporation and you know you're not allowed to install Skype? You just need to make a long-distance call to your mom. Just go to the browser, type in voxio.com, log in. It's got video and it's got audio right there on the browser. So again, it's simplifying things that were previously not possible. You had to install stuff, you have updates, you have a lot of other things, right? Another service is Wordy. Now, how many of you have heard of this website called Ingrish.com? It's hilarious. If you haven't, go check it out, but don't do it all now because you'll kill the broadband. It's basically a website where people have really bad translations. I saw a really funny one. It was, these DVD players that have region free, right? And it was a DVD player that instead of saying region-free DVD player, it said religion-free DVD player. And you're like, okay. And so what Wordy does is it helps you copy edit stuff. Usually you would have to have somebody in your team hired permanently to basically look through any press release or any website copy or anything to make sure it made sense grammatically, that it made sense in terms of diction, and obviously that it read well. Wordy democratizes and simplifies this by having an aggregation of copy editors globally. And all you do is you install a plugin on WordPress if you're a blogger, or you can just submit a document straight to the website, and they will give you a bid of what it's going to cost, and within a few minutes, they'll give you an estimate how long it's going to take. You'll have your document back, fully copy edited with everything marked up, and then you can go. This is not, it wasn't possible before. You know, another one, Holvi. I don't know about you guys, but I know that at least twice in my life, I have been in charge of some group, and I've been in charge of getting the money for the group and then putting that into the purchase. Let's say it was a football team and you need to buy all the jerseys, and then you were the one that was stuck with collecting the money and paying for it. Well, that's always a pain because it puts the individual a lot of pressure financially. Well, Holvi is banking for groups. Again, it's taking something that people have done in the past, but now it's a lot simpler. And all these things are really what the web enables us to do, is to simplify things that were previously very hard to do. So, where to start? Well, if you're thinking about ideas, and I know that we'll have another speaker later. I was in the bus with him. I don't know where he is right now. But he's going to be talking about how to come up with ideas. And really, it's about trying to find something that is already needed, something that is inefficient. We have an event that we just launched, which I'm going to encourage you to look up because we're going to have another one hopefully soon. It's called Seed Hack. And Seed Hack is a little different than a traditional hackathon in the sense that what we try to do is we try to bring industries and industry problems and hackers together. And the hope is that the problems that the industry has can be solved by the hackers, rather than just having it be a free-form hackathon. Now, one of the companies that came out of that was called TribeShot. For our first Seed Hack, we had the National Health Service come and talk about some of the problems. Now, one thing that I did not know was that in the UK, as any other country, there's a bunch of people, part of the general population, who do not speak the native tongue. So in the UK, you have a lot of people that don't speak English, and because of that, any kind of interaction with the health service is tricky. Apparently, it's £500 million worth of lost appointments because people do not know that they have an appointment or that they could cancel it, whatever. So this is what this company did, TribeShot. After going to the Seed Hack event and an understanding of an inefficiency in an industry, they decided to give this a shot. So now they're solving a problem that they already have a captive customer. Another thing is, if you're looking at things that you do every day, Romania, Honduras, Poland, Italy, a lot of countries have a lot of different things that are different from the United States. And it's very easy to look at the United States and say, hey, this idea has been done well in the United States, let me clone it over here or something. Maybe try to do it the other way around. Try to say, look, what is it that we have unique to us, or any specific problem or bureaucratic process or something that is unique to us that we can solve here, and that would make it a lot simpler when it goes global. And that's another thing that you could do there. An example was the currency exchange, which obviously the more you deal with international transactions, the more that becomes a problem. And the last one, I think you could loosely categorize as maybe mashups or whatnot, but effectively it's, if you had a piece of data from this and a piece of data from that and you bring them together, does that add value? And I think I've given you examples of these three concepts slides where I talked about democratization and simplification of services. So just a quick wrap up on SeedCamp. Again, it's a global micro-seed investment program. The core value of it lies in the network, both of our companies and our mentors. Our next event is in Paris in December. It is, where's Bogdan? Oh, there he is. It is right before the copycat of How to Web. I think it's called Le Web. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's we're hosting it right before Le Web, and and so I would encourage you, if you have any ideas or any companies you want to start, please go ahead and apply. Stay tuned for the next seed hack. I'm still crunching on that. It usually involves me not sleeping for 2 weeks, so I have to prepare myself. The Twitter handle is SC_seedhack, because somebody else took seedhack already. So, 2 other things that I think would be of value for you to check out if you haven't done so already. The first one is, if you're thinking about starting a business and you're concerned that what happens if I work on it for a certain period of time and one of the founders leaves and he screws me over for my equity, go check out in our seed hack section the Founders Collaboration Agreement. It is something that is for you to sign with the other co-founders of your company so that you know what happens if one of you leaves. How much should you retain? If you sell the company, how much you should retain? It's entirely for founders and free. The second one is the seedsummit.org website. If you're looking to raise financing, Seedcamp and Seed Summit recently have a partnership with AngelList in the United States to help bring angels to meet more European companies. And that's going to be via seedsummit.org. Now, additionally, on seedsummit.org, you can download the model framework term sheets that are called the Seed Summit term sheets. And if you haven't seen these, you really, really should check them out before you go raise funds. Effectively, 25 of the best VCs globally have basically said, look, this framework here represents 80% of the terms that we generally use. So we're willing to sort of stand by these terms and say, hey, this is generally what we use. So if you want to have a good idea what a real term sheet looks like and what you are likely to get from an investor, go to seedsummit.org and download the term sheets. There's 2 of them. One is usually used by angels and one's usually used by VCs. Take a look at them, ask questions, do reviews, everything. They're there for you to use and they're free. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Carlos. I have to talk to Loic about that copycat problem. Well, if you got any questions, please just raise your hand. I'm expecting a few questions. The girls are already prepared with the microphones. Can I ask you something?
You.
I've seen that you've got a lot of Eastern European companies at Seedcamp.
Yep.
Why is that?
So, first of all, a third of our companies are Eastern European. And I'd like to say that there is some sort of, mischievous plan behind that, but there isn't. It's actually entirely driven by quality. We have the bulk of the Eastern European applicants are incredibly talented technically and have some amazing ideas. And I think it's partially born out of a lot of the inspiration that they're getting from recent successes. For example, here in Romania, we have 2 companies, Uberview and Brainient, which I know are inspiring future entrepreneurs. In Slovenia, we have the same thing. And so the more case studies you have of successful companies in Poland, we have the Codility guys and Erply guys. So, you basically create a situation where there's inspiration. That inspiration creates new businesses, and those new businesses are both technically capable and are addressing very, very real needs. So it's just a matter of chance, really. Got those.
One question over here.
You just mentioned that they are technically brilliant most of the times. The companies are technically brilliant, the founders, but most of the cases we see that they lack in a clear business model. How important is it to you in the beginning when you choose who to actually invest to?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think yesterday you saw two speakers talk about the things that are generally required as part of the analysis by an investor. Product, market, there's another one, the deal, and the team, of course. Now, in terms of what we look for, typically when SeedCamp receives companies, the one key thing that really does make a difference is having a prototype. So, however, having a prototype doesn't necessarily mean you're already at the business model stage. So, because of what our mentor network does, we definitely do help companies that have both a prototype and potential understand what it is that they need to do to evolve. So that's part of what we try to help them with. But if they come without a product, really, or a real problem, then it's a lot harder. It's a lot easier for us to polish an existing problem or product than it is for us to create that.
Unfortunately, Carlos won't be able to attend the final panel on web accelerators. We did a little minor screw up with the hour of the flight, and he has to get back to London. But because of that, I want to ask you something. Which is like the biggest difference between SeedCamp and the other incubators in Europe?
Okay. Well, I mean, I think one thing that's very different is the events model that we have. I mean, we basically go to the countries and give a lot of value for free as part of the experience. I mean, all the companies that are accepted into a mini SeedCamp event, like we have Barcelona next week, they're all flying there, they get all the mentoring for free as part of that. And we address certain regions as we move around on a yearly basis. And that's very unique. But I guess, then there's the greater question of, and because I won't be here to be part of the panel, is whether there's a lot of accelerators, incubators. And frankly, it's great to have the diversification and nichification of financing. And I think there's always room for more people to help out companies. And it's really about helping all the companies grow together. So I think it's a great thing for the ecosystem.
Yeah, do you think that? I did that. Do you think that because of these web accelerators, we are starting to have like real ecosystem in Europe? Because like 3 or 4 years ago, there was almost nothing.
Yeah, I mean.
Is this the first step?
Yeah, it is. But okay, if you look at the VC landscape, you have funds that are generalists and you have funds that are very specialist. So I think you might have seen yesterday during some of the speakers' presentations saying address the needs or the specificity of your investor. If the investor is interested in this, go to this investor. If you're interested in that, go to that investor. So I think what we're starting to see is a little bit of that happening at the earlier stage of financing. And what that just provides is more options. So the more options exist, the more the ecosystem matures, the more service providers are there, the more that as a whole, the ships rise together.
In Romania, but not only in Romania, I think it's the same for all the countries in Southern and Eastern Europe. We don't have many investors with consistent tech background. So then you have two options. You can go for investors outside, but that's a little bit difficult. Or you can go for investors in the local market, which are interested in investing into tech, but they don't really have the experience with that. So which one of those two bad things is the...
Or you can fight a SeedCamp.
Yeah, you can do that too.
And then we help you with all that process.
Yes, but unfortunately, you just got it's 60 companies in 4 years, so...
Look, it's...
Hopefully we can push out more. I mean, you are doing a great job, but you cannot invest in all the companies out there.
Yeah. It's a good question. I think if you were asking me this question as an advisor to a company that's based in Romania, and you were saying, and I were to say, hey, are you a Romanian company addressing entirely the Romanian market? And you would say, yes. Then I would say, okay, well, it's probably best if you get a Romanian investor, because it's going to be a little harder to sort of attract an external investor. If you're saying, I'm a Romanian company, I want a global market, I think as long as you take the right steps to make it easier for that investor to become interested. Obviously, if you make calls, if you network, if you go to the right events, you will eventually meet those people. And then at that point, you'll rise to the surface. I mean, there's a lot of examples of that happening, where the company itself took upon themselves the duty and responsibility to go network, to meet the right investors for them to scale globally. So it depends on what your company is doing and what the needs are.
All right.
One question?
Yeah, one more question.
Hi. I want to ask you if you could tell us why did you decide to organize SeedHack? If you could tell us a bit more how it's differentiated from traditional hackathons, and also if SeedCamp is planning to go outside of Europe in a major way. I mean, beyond New York, perhaps to Asia or something.
Okay, I'll answer them in reverse order. In terms of going beyond globally, I mean, we already have. We've gone to Singapore, we've gone to India, we've gone to South Africa. I think the challenge with expanding further and further is that we need to make sure that we can inspire those ecosystems, have them be ready for an ongoing relationship, and also so that us as a team don't die from being on the airplane all the time. So, I mean, we're trying to constantly balance that. I'm looking into how I can clone myself. I haven't gotten there yet. In terms of SeedHack, the way the SeedHack was created was because I saw three problems. One was hackers wanted problems to work on, but they kept on revolving around the same kind of stuff. I would see a lot of text editors being made, email clients being made, Twitter clients being made, dating networks being made, and they're like, you know, I want something really cool. So, okay, I need to solve that problem for hackers. Then there are companies that have APIs that are too under the radar, and they're not really visible, but they really solve a big problem. And say, how can I get my API some visibility so that people use it to solve meaningful problems, right? And the third one was companies that approach SeedCamp all the time, say, hey, we would love for people to solve this problem for us. We would love for problems, you know, the health service, the financial services, the publishers, et cetera. We have this problem, we have that problem. We'd love, do you have any startups that are doing that? So I had those three potential people that had this problem. I said, well, what if I bring them together? So a traditional hackathon would be like, okay, guys, let's just bring something, let's see what provides. We tried to address the needs of three different groups of people and bring them together. So the hope being that, you know, the hope being that a hacker with the use of some clever APIs can solve a problem for a corporate, and either that becomes a technology that is acquired by a corporate or it becomes its startup of its own. But that was the general genesis of SeedHack.
Okay, another one here, please.
Yeah.
Sergiu Dragănuș from Keyword Watchtower. Okay, starting a new project, building a startup is very interesting and it's very nice. The problem is with selling the products. Even they are very good products, we all know that it's possible that clients do not come so fast. Are you helping also the startups in the selling part or only in the developing part, in the first part?
Okay, first of all, we don't really help with development in the real world of development. Yes. I mean, I know how to code, I know how to do that stuff, but in the words of one of my companies, I'm a bad hacker, only because I haven't been doing it in a while, right? So that's not what we do. Now, in terms of sales, what we do, well, sales really it's a bigger question you're asking here, because you're saying, do you help me get sales if I'm not having sales? I think what I'm going to help you with is understanding why you're not getting sales.
If you help me rise the sales number, this is the question. Okay,
yes.
I have.
But the thing is that it's not my job to sell you. It's not my job to help you sell more stuff. It's my job to help you understand why you're not selling more stuff.
Yes.
Because
why I'm asking this, because I've seen the projects and where you invested money, and I use few of them. Mm-hmm. I know they have very good free services, and I haven't seen yet the paid services for few of them, and that's
some of them actually get have a lot of income.
Yeah.
Yes, this is clear. As Boomerang or something like this, they have very nice services, but they never advertise to my Gmail account. I'm using their services. I am a good client for them, but you see my point.
I see your point, but the thing that you're not privy to are the board discussions where there is a decision made about customer development, to use Eric Ries's terminology. Effectively, what you're not aware of is, okay, guys, do we actually have this product to the point where we should start charging for it? Is it ready? Is the customer willing to pay? What are the pricing points? What are the decisions? And every startup has a different point when that needs to happen. Before then, you may or may not feel like you should charge. So what we try to do is we try to help them understand, okay, at what point is it most likely the best time to start charging, or what time do you still need to continue in the customer development? If there's no traction, like you might be one of the customers, but if there is actually no traction and there's high churn, do you start charging? It's only going to make things go down faster, right? Or do you try to figure out at what point you're having more retention, what the interaction is, and then you start putting layers of monetization on top of it. And even then, how do you price that monetization? All these things are, but part of what we try to help with is understanding how that framework should be thought out. I don't necessarily know the best thing about the industry of the companies that we help out with, but I do understand the different frameworks that we can help them think through to get there.